Today on the I Love New Mexico podcast, I get to visit with a friend and a colleague who lives in Las Cruces, which is a place that we always get inquiries about. So today we get to talk with Kacie Henke, who is a realtor in Las Cruces, but also, more importantly, a resident and a fellow New Mexican. So thank you for being here, Kacie.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we began, we talked about the different things that seem to be important to our listeners. But one of the most important things I've found is that we have a lot of listeners who are from all over the world. I mean, I have listeners in um, Ireland and Scotland and England and somebody in now I'm not Liberia and
Oh.
Dubai. So why don't you start the podcast by telling people who are not from New Mexico exactly where Las Cruces is and what it is. How about that?
Yeah, sure. First, shout out to England and Scotland. Scotland's like my favorite place to visit ever. And I lived in England for 3 years. So shout out to all you listeners there. I can't wait to go back and visit one day and bring my whole entire family again. Um, so yeah, as far as Las Cruces is concerned, where it's located, we are very southern New Mexico. We're about an hour away from the border of Mexico. Um, El Paso, Texas. Most people have heard of El Paso before they've heard of Las Cruces, and we're very close. El Paso and Las Cruces are starting to merge together, so we are very, very far south in New Mexico.
And it's I don't think people have a real appreciation for the size of New Mexico. New Mexico is the fifth largest in terms of
Yes.
land mass, fifth largest state in the United States. And from where I live to where you live is, you should probably tell me, how far is that? Like 4.5, 5 hours?
Yeah, I think we're about 4 hours because you guys are about an hour away from, well, depending from Albuquerque, and
From
we're
Albuquerque. Mhm.
yeah, so we're like 3.5 hours from Albuquerque, and then about
Right.
4.5 from you guys. Yeah. So it's a far
Yeah. So I
distance.
think
It's
for
not, I mean, it's a day
it
trip,
is.
but
It is. It is. It
yeah.
absolutely is. But Kacie, I want folks to know about you. What is your first of all, how did you end up in Las Cruces? And what is your New Mexico story? How did you end up here in general?
Yeah. Well, it dates back to my papa. My papa is military, and he ended up in Cannon Air Force Base, which is Clovis, New Mexico. And that's where he was stationed. He also was in England. That's where my mom was born. That's then they went back again. And so the first base out of England was Cannon Air Force Base. So they ended up there. And my dad happened to be military as well. My mom and dad met at the some restaurant there and then started dating. And eventually we all ended up at Holloman Air Force Base because my grandparents got stationed at Holloman. And then that's where we've all ended up and we've all stayed. So Holloman Air Force Base is Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is about an hour um, east of Las Cruces, kind of northeast of Las Cruces. And so we've have a long generation, lots of family members that have been here that still live here in New Mexico. I feel like some people, I don't know if this is a good thing to say or not. Some people call it the land of the land of entrapment instead of the land of enchantment. But I don't feel that way. I think it's just a beautiful place to live. And I think there's so much positive versus the negative. But I think that everybody probably has something good or bad to say about where they live. But so many people stay because there's a lot of benefits. But I've been here my entire life. I did get out, moved to England, moved to Texas. I did get out a little bit, but I did go to college in Las Cruces. So I was here for 4 years, long time ago, and then of course got out. And then I came back in 2017, and it's been like I love it. I love it here. I like the
It's
size, I like the people.
it's one of my favorite cities. It's I went to school there. Of course, in 1978 was when I started, and I went to college at Las Cruces, and I never have stopped sort of in the back of my mind thinking about, okay, that's where I want to, go back or own some property or or live, or I don't know. Every time
Hmm.
your weather is much better in the winter than
It
ours
is.
is in the northern part of the state. And so even last night we were looking at houses. So it's really, in addition to being a beautiful place to visit, the weather's nice.
It's so much nicer. Like I'm looking out my window now and we don't have snow on the ground. I feel like you guys have already hit snow, haven't you? Like it's already snowed a couple times up
Like
in Santa
like
Fe.
like 14 inches one time.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
if we even hit that for a total in an entire year. Like maybe 3 or 4 years
Mhm.
collectively, we might hit that amount of snow. But I mean, my kids are still wearing shorts and t-shirts to school. And I mean, I think they should be wearing hoodies, but I'm always cold. But I mean, the weather is absolutely beautiful. And a lot of people relocate here because they're sick of the colder weather. Surprisingly, I get a lot of people from the colder states like Minnesota or Washington or some of those northern states, they're just sick of it and they're sick of the snow and they're like, we need something that doesn't have bad weather. And they find Las Cruces.
So you're raising a family there, right?
I am. I am. Yeah,
And
we
what
got
do you
four
think? What's
kiddos.
the coolest thing? Yeah, what's the coolest thing about raising a family there, do you think?
I think, I think there's a few things that I love about raising a family here. One, there's just the nature, like we can get outside. I'm a huge outdoorsy kind of person, and so I've raised my family to be that way as well. We go camping, we go hiking. There's tons of trails everywhere to go hiking, and I think that is so important for kids to get out of nature, get out into nature and get dirty and breathe in the fresh air and not be stuck inside all the time. And they can do it year round, which I think is super important because some places they can't. They're stuck inside for months at a time because it's so cold or, dangerous or whatever the case is. So this place is really nice for that. On top of that, I think the people and the community is just amazing. And I have people that relocate here all the time and they're like, I've never met so many friendly people in one place. Like people actually wave at you when you drive by and they hold the door open for you and they say please and thank you. And we're not used to that. And that community and that sense of kindness, I think radiates and people like my kids, I want them to have that internally instilled in them. And I think just being in the town and growing up that way, I think that that is like such a great way or environment to raise your kids in. So I love that part.
Well, when I was there, excuse me, when I was there, it felt like a really small town, even though
Hmm.
it was, and continues to be the second largest city in the state,
It
which
is.
in New Mexico is not
Hmm.
huge, but still, it felt, and it also has that feeling of being and I don't know if this is still true, sort of an agricultural community. I mean, that's still a
Well,
big piece
100%.
of your economy, right?
100%. Yes. So we have about 120,000 people here. And then we have all of the outlying cities or little towns that make up more, uh, um, what's the word? Residents. I can't say population. My goodness, my brain didn't work. So it makes up more population. um, but it is still such a sense of community, yes. And then agriculture. New Mexico State University is an ag college and will continue to always be an ag college. So we raise farmers and we teach people how to farm. Um, the kids' school, they have most of the parents, I think, are pecan farmers, onion farmers, cotton farmers. Like we have a huge community here. And what's cool is you get to know them all and they're all human. They're not like, I run the biggest pecan farm in the state of New Mexico and I was just talking to one at a field trip. He's an onion farmer. He was talking about the economy and how he ships to, all over. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that little Las Cruces helps, feed onions to the entire world. I thought it was more so just a local thing, but our agriculture is a huge part of our economy.
And I want folks to know just, I mean, talk about that local, especially the pecan
Yeah.
economy and what it's like to visit. I mean, because I don't think people get the magnitude of those pecan orchards in that area.
Yeah. So I think you're like, you want to live on the valley side, or you are a valley kind of person, and the valley is where all the pecan farms are. And or there's just like the east side or the west side, but not in like a gang kind of way. We're just that's kind of how we separate it. And on the west side is where the valley is. That's where the Rio Grande River runs through. And that's where there is just tons of agriculture. And it's kind of neat because you drive through Las Cruces and you see the desert and you see cactus and you see just kind of desert landscaping. And then you drive over to the valley side where we do have the Rio Grande and we have the farmland, and it doesn't look like you're in New Mexico anymore. We have
Mhm.
acres and acres and miles of beautiful pecan trees. A little bit up the road, we have pistachio. Like Alamogordo is known for pistachio farming, and they have tons of pistachios. And we actually, fun fact, I don't know if you know this, and you probably do since you've lived here, the wineries here, we have about six really good wineries here in Las Cruces that grow grapes, that make wine, and you can go in and taste them and have like your little wine tasting board, and it's incredible. Like it's such a fun experience. And you think Napa Valley for wine, but if you want like a cheaper, more relaxed kind of wine tasting experience, you should come to Las Cruces, New Mexico. I think all of us should hang out and go wine tasting together.
I think we should. And when I was there, I lived in what used to be a bunkhouse out off of Snow Road in
Oh,
Mesilla and or west of Mesilla. And I mean, there's also this rich history that people
yes.
who don't live here may not understand completely. But do you want to talk about that just a little bit? Because Mesilla is so cool.
Yeah, so Mesilla, most people, I guess, don't realize that Mesilla is its own town. They have their own government, they have their own mayor, they have their own set of rules, their own police, and then we have Las Cruces that's kind of surrounding Mesilla. And Mesilla has this rich culture and history. And we're about to do a tree lighting in Mesilla, which is pretty cool. And like the whole town gets together, and they just have a different set of rules, but in a good way. It's just a different vibe when you go down. And I think it really translates most to Santa Fe. It just gives that same vibe of Santa Fe just because all of the architecture is very old and historic and kind of that Pueblo, New Mexican vibe. And all the buildings are neat, and it's just a cool little place to go. And then surrounding that is back to it, Las Cruces, and people, the houses, everything is definitely more expensive. That's why I think it translates most to Santa Fe, because it's a little bit more expensive like you guys are, but it's still like the cheaper version of Santa Fe if you wanted to get that vibe.
Well, and I mean, they say on the wall of La Posta that Billy the Kid hung out there, and it's where the Treaty of Guadalupe
Yes.
Hidalgo was signed, which made that
Hmm.
southern part of New Mexico a part of the U.S. territory instead of Mexico. I used to walk to the post office in the summertime because I went to summer school, and then I would sit down there on the plaza and drink coffee.
Yeah.
It was like back before there were coffee shops. So I would have to bring my own in a thermos, but um
Yeah.
it's really, really beautiful. But there's so much else to Las Cruces. I mean, if you were let's say somebody's coming to visit and they have 3 or 4 days, what are some things they absolutely shouldn't miss if they're coming to Las Cruces? If you have company
Hmm.
coming to town, what do you take them to do?
Yeah, so I think food is huge in Las
Of
Cruces.
course.
And of course, yes. And I think that that's like our number one thing that anytime I have people relocate here or they're like, hey, what should we do? I always send them to go eat at different places. La Posta is on one of them. It's just a really neat restaurant and it's has this rich culture, like you said. It's really, really fun. And then they have, I don't know if when you were there, they had parrots inside, but they have like this huge parrot
Yes.
atrium with parrots and stuff. Yes, it's like so neat. And then like cool gift shop and jewelry shop. And you can get pretty much anything you need if you were a gift giver for your family and you're coming into town and you want to experience it and then bring back gifts. All you need to do is go to La Posta and they have like everything that you need, which is really cool. And then delicious margarita is probably the best in town. And then I would say hiking. If you are into hiking, we have a place called Slot Canyon. It reminds me of, you know, the little wavy canyons in Arizona. Like I can't even think of the name of them, but they're tall and they're dug out by wind and water. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like
Well, and like
they're tall
what the
and
Narrows in Utah too.
yes.
Which could be, is it sort of like that? Yeah. I didn't know that
And
existed. I'm writing it down.
yeah. So Slot Canyon, it's a really easy hike, so your kids can go. Or I mean, some of it gets a little narrow, but nothing like claustrophobic or anything. And I think it's like a mile hike, and it's so nice. And then after you get to the other side of it, you can hike more, and there's more hiking. But it's just a nice, cool, and you don't feel like you're part of New Mexico. And then we have Dripping Springs, which we have waterfalls in Las Cruces, which most people don't think that we have as well. So Dripping Springs, after a good rain, it is an absolute must to go to Dripping Springs. And you do have to pay to park your car, so it's like $5. I've made that mistake because I don't carry cash, and I've been there, and I'm like, darn it, I need $5. But so I'm just telling you guys that now. If you do go to Dripping Springs, bring $5 to park your car, and then you can go and it has the old is it uh is it infirmaries? Is that the name of it? Like where when people got really sick, there was like these old
Oh, an
like
infirmary.
these
Yeah.
buildings. Infirmary. Okay. So there's this old building that was an infirmary that people when they got sick, they would send them up to this Dripping Springs and the buildings are still there. And the signage, there's a lot of history there. So you can go there and check out the buildings, which is cool. And then if you walk a little bit further, there's this magical waterfall, which you can go in and it's pretty neat because you wouldn't think that there's waterfalls here, but there are. There's some cool waterfalls. So I would say those two places. Um, if it's outdoor. And then, of course, we're really close to White Sands, New Mexico. I know that's not Las Cruces, but White Sands is about 45-minute drive towards Alamogordo. And people come from all over the world to get married at White Sands, to have family photos at White Sands. I know people that fly in their photographers just to have photos at White Sands because it's like one of the most magical places on earth. And it's miles and miles and miles of beautiful crystal white gypsum sand that does not get hot ever. So you can stand on it and it's 120 degrees outside and it's still cool, which I think that's like the main thing. But there's no water. So if you're going for a beach vibe, we just got the beach. We don't have the ocean surrounding it or any water, but it's pretty magical.
That's
So
so we
those are a few
did
of the
a
places.
so I did a I can't remember. It might have been at the beginning of the summer. I did a summer bucket list podcast and I talked about going to White Sands during the full moon. And I would still
Yeah.
we'll put a link to that podcast here, but I have yet to do that. I know my son did it once, and that's one of the nights when they allow you to stay all night, but the reservations are really limited.
Yes.
So, have you gone on a full moon before?
So I've just been to White Sands a lot and I've never done the full moon night. Um, because there's just a lot of people, which I think is really cool, but I like to go just during the day. But I do want to go to it. And you're right, it does fill up fast, but there's a lot of them. I mean, they're every, I don't know how often, I don't remember science, how often the full moons go, but there's quite a few of them. And then there's like midnight trail walks, I think, or full moon trail walks. Like the rangers will actually take you on walks on those full moon nights. Like it's pretty neat.
Well, we have to talk for a minute because you and I
Yeah.
both, and I keep trying to remind people that this is not my only vocation that I actually have to earn a living, but you sell real estate. So I think it's really important for people to know that even though Las Cruces is an incredibly hospitable place and in terms of weather and the people and things to do and attractions, but it's also not an expensive place to move to, whether you
No,
want to raise a family or retire, right?
exactly. Yes. So we average cost of living is much lower than a lot of places. I just did a video actually on it. I think I don't remember the numbers, but we were one of the lowest cost of livings. There was like a list of say 300 places, and we ranked like 260 for lowest cost of living. So we were in that category, which I think is pretty cool because there's obviously tons and tons of places to live. Average price of home is less than 300,000, and that's
Wow.
just crazy. I know that's like a dirt lot for you guys, but it's crazy. And you can get new construction homes for I just listed one for 289,000 for a new construction home that's offering 6% towards right by down or closing costs. Like we have very affordable living, I think, and that's what I think most people are attracted to whenever they are relocating here or when they're choosing to stay here after college or choosing to stay here after they retire because it's unmatched. They look at other places and they can't fathom paying other prices when they look at ours. They're like, wow, the weather's good. The price of homes is good. The commutes are really good. It's unbeatable. We don't have great shopping.
And
I'll give
so,
you that.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
have great shopping.
No, no, our mall is not the best. We don't have, we go into El Paso to shop, or we go to Albuquerque to shop, or we just use Amazon. So I can't give us credit for that. So if you want good shopping, don't move here. But other than that, we got all the rest of the boxes checked.
Well, everybody does their shopping online anyway, so that's not a
Exactly.
big deal. But and you have good medical care. I mean, now you have a medical school at the college, right? I mean, you have
Hmm.
an osteopath. So that's, I mean, that's all people always
Hmm.
ask me that when they're looking at homes in Santa Fe. They're because I would say my median age of buyer is about like from 58 to 65. And that's a
Okay.
question that everybody asks me. So what's the deal there for Las Cruces?
Oh, I've never ran those stats. That's a really good question. I think it's on opposite spectrums. So we have a lot of first time home buyers because we do have the college. And so we have a lot of people moving here. We have new doctors moving here because they go to Burrell Medical School and then they might get their residency here or their new doctor here because New Mexico has those cool doctor programs where if you live in a rural state, you can get your medical school paid for. That's what my cousin did. He actually went to Creighton University and then went to Santa Fe and actually was a dentist in Santa Fe to get his school paid for. So they have those programs. So we actually get a lot of new doctors in, which is pretty cool. So we have a lot of first time home buyers. And then we have a really good nursing program too. So we get, the nurses, all of that. But then we get a lot of people looking to retire here because for medical reasons, a lot of doctors say, "Hey, you need a dry climate." Well, that's us. We're very much a dry climate. So people move here for that or the cost of living. Or they're just ready for sunshine. And we have 360 days of sunshine a year here in Las Cruces. Like it's a fantastic place if you're needing that vitamin D. So as far as age range, I don't know. I need to actually do that research. I'm not quite sure, but I feel like I get both opposite sides of the spectrum.
Well, that's really cool. And you still have a really strong economy. I mean, you
Yes.
it seems to me, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of our driving force for our economy, we do have agriculture, like we had already discussed, but we have a lot of renewable energy. Uh, that's a huge driving force, and I don't think people really realize that with Las Cruces that we're such a huge hitter for renewable energy here. We have a lot of space programs because we have NASA, we have the Spaceport America down the road, we have um, lots of different entities that are aerospace driven here locally. Then we have FBI, we have Border Patrol. So we have huge corporations that drive our economy that most places don't have at all. So if you're into any of those and you need a job or you want something more cost, like better cost of living, that's, and you're into that field, like this is such a great place to go.
That's so cool. I'm it's just funny to me that we're talking today after last night we got online, looked at houses like should we have a place that it's the curse of being a realtor. You everywhere you go,
Right.
you look at houses. We
Right.
just went to San Miguel and we looked at houses there and it was like, no, we want to go somewhere where the weather's nice, but we don't want our extra second whatever home to be you know, a day's air air flight away. So who
Sure.
knows?
Yeah.
We may come to see you sooner rather than later, but I want people to find
Yes.
you if they're curious. So in the show notes to this podcast, we have a link to we've got Kacie's information so you can contact her, but we've also got a link to her website and her social media profiles. So what just before we get finished, what's the best time of year if somebody's just coming for a visit to get acquainted with the city?
I think the fall is always really nice, and I'm like early, early fall because that's surprisingly when we get most of our flowers blooming, and it is absolutely stunning. We have sage bushes all over New Mexico, and we have Palo Verdes. I don't know if you guys have those there, but they're these green
We
trees
don't.
that okay. Oh, they're y'all should plant some, but I don't know if they're like if y'all are too cold. But they're
I
green
think it may
trunk
be.
trees with these gorgeous yellow flowers. So our entire town is purple and yellow, and it's just absolutely stunning. And so you drive anywhere and it just makes you happy because those two colors are really good for, I don't know, your mood. And then also, um, we're not windy at that time. The weather is not very hot because the summers are a little bit hot. Spring, we get a little bit windy. We have 2 months that are just brutal with the wind for us. And then I'm sure other places like Kansas or I don't know, wherever it's a little bit windier. But I would say early fall is probably the best because it's the most beautiful and the weather's the best.
Well, and I'm not going to ask you to tell folks where to stay or other places to eat besides La Posta because I want them to contact you. I want them to give you a
Yeah,
call and
I have a
get
whole Las
your
Cruces
best
guide.
tips. Nice. Of course you do.
Yes.
Of course you do. Good job. Well, Kacie, it's been so much fun to visit. We are coming to
Thank
visit
you.
soon
Yes.
in person.
Please.
So, yeah,
Please do. You better call.
absolutely. Yeah, of course,
Yes.
of course.
Good.
And thank you for giving us, this is just as the weather starts to get icky. I want folks to know that they can go and spend a week in Las Cruces and be really comfortable.
Yes, we have a lot of snowbirds coming our way because they want this for the winter. So this is definitely a good place to come and visit when it gets a little too cold where you're at.
Yep, nice. Well, thank you, Kacie, for spending some time with
Yes,
me.
ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
It was. It was.